spent 20 minutes methodically going from stone to stone until Jeffrey's left paw ran over what he was looking for. "Aha!" he cried into the dark room, the sound echoing faintly as it reverberated from the low ceiling above them. "What is it?" asked Averly excitedly, stepping closer and leaning into where Jeffrey's paw rested. "This is what I was looking for, dear. Take a look," said Jeffrey, stepping back while lowering his arm from the wall. Avery peered closer to the stone, scanning it until she found it. A small A had been carved into the stone at the lower right corner of the ancient block, almost imperceptible in the flickering light of the torch's fire. Averly blinked twice and ran her claw over the stone, feeling for the small indentation catch as she passed over it. Averly turned and looked at Jeffries. "What does that mean?" she asked. The small wombat smiled at her. "It means we're going in the right direction. Now if you'll follow me, we'll follow the sigil along here," said Jeffries, counting the blocks to the left of the inscribed stone with his left paw, while leaving the right in place atop the stone with the A. 4, 5, 6, 7, said Jeffries, stretching his arms as far as they could before releasing the altered block and placing it on the 7th in front of him. Jeffries continued on like this until his count reached 50 and he stopped, placing both paws squarely on the stone in front of him. Jeffries turned to Averly and said, "Here's the midpoint marker," turning back towards the stone. He spread his fingers, allowing Averly to see a nearly imperceptible A, this time lowercase, had been carved into the rock under a crack, naturally hiding it from view. Averly had to place the torch below the jagged edge of the stone to see it. She was amazed that the wombat was able to feel such a tiny faucet in the rock with his fingers alone. Jeffrey stretched his left arm upwards, counting off 5 rocks above, and began to head to the left again, stepping with every 7th rock until he stopped again and placed both arms overhead. Jeffries turned to Averly. "We're almost there. There's one more marker to find before we're able to get to the locking mechanisms for the chamber," said Jeffries. The two of them continued on in the darkness, Jeffrey's shuffling feet scraping against the dusty floor, and Averly keeping close to allow him the best light to research by. Though, by the way Jeffrey's fingers were able to find the tiny script, Averly was sure he'd have been able to do this in pitch-black darkness if he had needed to. They continued on for a way like this before Jeffries stopped for the final time. "All right, dear, we found the mechanism. Take a look," said Jeffries, stepping back from the wall while flattening his palm outwards to display the final marker. Averly once again stepped in close to the wall, bending slightly to see the final mark in the wall. It was much smaller than the others, at least half of the size, though the detail was much greater. A small diamond had been cut into the rock, and below it a small paw reached out towards it. Another small lowercase a had been carved into the facets of the diamond, as though to represent the Amber Zone's treasure being within grasp. From less than a foot away, it looked like just another crag to ignore, the shadow overhanging from the protrusion obscuring it completely. "It's amazing that you're able to find it," said Averly. Jeffries turned towards her, his eyes staring coolly in the firelight. "I've been doing this for decades," replied Jeffries stiffly. Averly bit her lower lip. "Sorry, I just meant it was so small that I wouldn't have been able to ever find it myself," offered Averly quietly. "It's all right, dear," said Jeffries, cheering up considerably and smiling once again. "So, what do we do now?" asked Averly, peering at the cliff while scratching her temple with one claw. "All right. Well, the first thing I need you to do is stand over here and place your palms like so," said Jeffries, positioning himself a few steps to the right of the marked stone and spreading his arms out above and below his waist, placing each of his palms on 2 of the stones on the wall. Averly did as she was told, passing the torch to Jeffries and placing her paws as he had requested. As she passed the torch to him, she could see that each of the stones that she was resting her weight against were discolored compared to the rest of the wall, a faint brown against the dull grays of the surrounding stonework. "And I'll do the same over here," said Jeffries, shuffling over to the left of the marked stone, leaning the torch against the wall on his left side, and placing his open palms on the stones that were different from their surroundings as well, a mild green tint setting them apart from the others. "All right, on the count of 3, I want you to put your whole body's weight against your paws and think of one word and one word only." "Open," said Jeffries. "All right," replied Averly, locking her legs and leaning with all her might against the wall. "Make sure your fingers are spread out completely," said Jeffries. Averly stretched out her fingers as far as she could manage and gripped into the wall as hard as she could. 1, 2, 3, said Jeffries. "Open," thought Averly, her nose scrunching up with concentration as her eyes squeezed shut from the effort of pressing into the wall. A faint blue light bled out through her closed eyelids as she opened her eyes slowly. The tattoo covering her face was glowing in the gloom. The light spread from her tattoo and down her neck and to her arms, and out through her fingertips and into the stone. The stone glowed faintly as the light spread from block to block along the length of the wall, towards Jeffries, forming the edges of a large diamond inset into the wall. The outline gained energy as the edges met each other above Jeffries' paws against the wall, and the outline luminosity grew in intensity. The blue light first turned yellow, then orange, blue, then green, and finally white before spreading inward, filling the room with light and casting eerie shadows of the two animals against the bookcases behind them. As the energy reached the center of the diamond, it began flashing quickly between the colors once again as a rectangular outline grew from the middle of the shape, expanding between the two of them. As the light moved from the center of the diamond, the stones began to fade into the shadows cast by the magical light until a full rectangle of empty stones had been replaced with an opening leading into a hallway lit by the light moving down its length as it expanded into the darkness beyond. The light from the diamond first lessened, moving from the opening towards Jefferies and Averly, and then diminished completely as the opening finished showing itself, the light ending as Averly's fingertips and receding up her arms and back up into the tattoo along the side of her face. Jefferies let go of the wall. "It's all right now. You can relax," said Jefferies, picking up the torch and moving towards Averly. Averly rubbed her paw over her tattoo gently. It was warm under her fingers, and she's sure it hummed slightly from the touch. "What was that?" Averly asked Jefferies. "Well, since you're a Senderai, the magic that you use has to flow out through the marking your family was branded with. Does it feel odd?" responded Jefferies. Averly rubbed her face thoughtfully. "Yes, it tingles. Like a waking limb. Is it always going to do that?" Averly asked, unsure of herself. Jefferies shrugged. "That depends on what magic you perform and which artifact you use. The charm that hides the alcove responded to the magic ability in your blood. Non-magic users aren't able to open the door, and there needs to be at least two of them, or the charm assumes you're an intruder and countermeasures are activated. It's an old spell and is meant to only let those that need a trinket through into the chamber," said Jefferies. Averly rubbed her face with both paws, working the tingling feeling from her skin as best she could. It moved on slowly. Averly stepped over to the opening in the wall and peered down the hallway and turned to look at Jefferies. "Shall we get going then?" Averly asked. Jefferies dusted off his paws, rubbing them against his pant legs, and clapped them together. "I suppose we should, my dear," said Jefferies. The two of them stepped side by side into the dark hallway, going deeper into the chasm, leaving the bookcases behind them. The corridor was cooler than the chamber, and cleaner, Averly noticed. "This chamber isn't open very often, is it?" asked Averly. Jefferies sighed. "No, not too often. We've had a long history of keeping this secret, and we've done a very good job at it," said Jefferies. "How often have others been in here?" Averly asked, pursing her lips. Averly was quiet for a moment before responding. "A pawful at times, honestly. You may have helped others with getting their focusing heirlooms, because that's what they are, family heirlooms most often, but very few outside the Amberstein family have been allowed in here. Since you were so kind to the children, it wasn't hard to let you know of this place, though," replied Jefferies. They walked on down the corridor, coming to the end as it turned to the right. Jefferies pushed his torch out in front of him. "Wait here, child," said Jefferies. The torchlight caught faint glimmers along the rock face of the walls. Strange shadows fell over the stone. Thin ethereal lines passed over the blocks, but showed nothing. Only their shadows cast by the fire's light gave away their presence. Jefferies bent down to the floor. "Hold this for me, would you, dear?" he asked Averly, holding out the torch's handle to the fox. Averly obliged him, holding the torch out over the wombat's head as he kneeled on the ground and pulled a small piece of chalk from his pocket. He drew a circle, and within that a square, cutting it into four with the chalk. Within each square he drew 3 runes. He moved his paw to the outside of the circle and drew a smaller circle to the right of it. Inside this circle he drew a final collection of runes. Upon completing the final rune, the smaller circle glowed pink, and the light spread towards the larger circle. As it reached the square inside the circle, the light turned a deep angry red and darkened considerably as it made its way towards the runes inside the square's quadrants, darkening first to a burgundy and finally a deep black that glowed darkly within the red circle. The black light spread to the shadows cast by the torchlight, reaching up from the floor, along the walls, and up towards the ceiling. The light gave weight to thousands of ethereal gossamer strands that glowed a faint deep purple surrounding a black inner core, spread out over the entirety of the rock surface. The strands went farther than the torchlight would allow, receding into the darkness at the end of the hallway, only shown by the angles cut from the strands within the light's radius. Averly stood completely still, sucking in a short breath. What are they?" Averly asked, astonished. "Death strands," replied Jefferies. "Dark magic ensuring those that get this far don't get any further. Those that step into them are drained of their life force within a few steps, and often don't have time to realize what's going on before it's too late. They're completely weightless as well. You just get sleepy and then stop moving as the life force is drained out of you." "You use black magic?" asked Averly, tightening visibly. As she looked at it, the webs cast out in front of her, only a few feet away. "Magic has no allegiance," responded Jefferies. "Those that wield it use whatever forms they're able, whenever they're able, to get their needs taken care of. Black magic isn't any different from other types of magic, except you know the outcome you're looking for is a permanent solution to your problem." "Oh," said Averly, growing quiet. "If I'd taken a few steps ahead of him, I wouldn't have even known that it was happening," Averly thought to herself. Around the glyphs he'd already drawn, Jefferies drew a large diamond with his piece of chalk. Within the diamond he drew a circle of runes around the 2 inner ellipses, and drew a large cross between the 4 corners of the diamond. The cross glowed green in the dim light in the hallway, and the runes covered by the new marks broke away from the light, curling sickly. At the same time, the strands that covered the walls and crossed the length of the hallway began to sag, their shadows falling towards the floor, fading into nothing. A moment later, the entire hallway was clear, no trace of the deadly trap remaining whatsoever. "All right, we can make our way through here, dear," said Jeffrey, standing up, using one of his feet as he scrubbed at the chalk markings on the floor, first obscuring them, then destroying them completely with each pass of his foot. He placed the chalk back into his pocket and, placing his arm behind his back, stretched his spine. Gentle cracking came from where he pressed. "Would you mind leading the way?" Averly asked, unsure of whether other surprises were waiting for the two of them. "Of course, my dear," responded Jeffrey, smiling at her. Jeffrey continued his way down the corridor, and Averly followed. They came to the end of the hallway and faced two heavy wooden doors, reinforced along their edges with rough cast steel and heavy padlocks. A faint breeze spread out from the edges of the doors, running over Averly's feet, making her shiver. Averly paced in place, growing anxious with anticipation. "Are they behind these doors?" asked Averly. Jeffries turned to her. "Yes, my dear, we're here. Now let me find the keys to the blasted things." Jeffries reached into his pocket and rummaged around the set of keys and pulled them out with a flourish. He began counting the keys while swinging them around the large brass ring, looking for the right one to open the doors. Towards the end of the ring, just before the second to last key, he found the one he was looking for and pulled it towards his palm and moved towards the heavy locks that sat before him at eye level. "Hold this for me, please, dearest," Jeffrey said to Averly, passing her the torch. Jeffries grabbed the first lock and placed the key into the chamber and twisted gently. The lock fell open, clicking dully as it separated from itself and swung gently towards him. Moving to the second lock, he did the same, and the action repeated. He removed the locks from their housings within the door frame and placed them in his pants pocket. The pocket bulged outwards as they fell into the recesses of the fabric. "Are you ready, child?" he asked Averly, placing both paws against the joining of the doors and tensing his arms. "Of course," said Averly, grinning with excitement. "All right, then. Let's get this started, shall we?" said Jeffries, pushing against the heavy wood and opening the entrance to the chamber within. Light from the torch spilled into the chamber beyond the two of them. Averly stretched her arm out towards the darkness before her, inching her view farther as she moved. Jeffrey stepped into the room, and Averly followed closely behind. The recess was small, the ceiling shorter than the hallway they had been passing through, slanting in at an increasing degree before reaching the far wall. There were tables resting against the wall, made of ancient stone and wood, inlaid with precious metals that shone faintly in the torch's reach. Jeffries came up to the table and stood before them. Averly stepped beside him, and they both peered at the artifacts that rested there. Racks and shelves ran the length of the tables, reaching far back to the wall. Just above the wombat's head, Averly hit the hunch while standing there, the cavern not being designed for wolf kind. She scanned the tables. Jewels and ornate weaponry stood on every flat surface of the table. Racks of swords, maces, and daggers lined with the far wall, each inlaid with jewels of various colors and sizes. The firelight played within all of them simultaneously, casting pinpoints of light over each other, swaying as the fire danced atop the torch. Over the smaller weapons laced large metal hooks that held large weapons suitable for badgers, bears, and wolves. The center of the wall was mastered by the largest greatsword Averly had ever seen, reaching as far along the wall as she was tall when she stretched out to her full height. She stared at this, studying the deep blue stones that lined its hilt and the large blood-red garnet that settled in the center of the blade above the others. Her vision moved to the smaller shelves and racks before the weaponry. Jewelry of the most ornate designs glimmered before her. Silvers and golds, as well as alloys she couldn't put a name to, danced in the light as she swept the torch out before her. Hundreds of pieces of what could have been hundreds to thousands of hours of work laid out before her. The number of tiny jewels caught the breath in her throat. She stared at them, trying to identify the types of stones she saw. Some were colors she couldn't put a name to. Some seemed to change hue and saturation with a mind of their own as she counted. There were stones held in fittings the size of her index claw. "These are beautiful," Averly said, trailing off as she continued to study the work before her. Jeffrey smiled to himself and placed his paws behind his back. "You're right, dear. These really are amazing pieces of work. Some of these were made by the 4 magic users of the highest orders, by crafts animals that rivaled no others in their times. There will be pieces here that will never be found in any other collections on the planet, as far as some that were used by mages so powerful that they had to be locked away for fear of who would use them next. We've been storing these from every great recorded magical age for the last few centuries, but the Amberstone collection goes back millennia. As far as we know, we're the most complete magical artifact collection in the known history, and we've been doing our best to live up to that reputation. Not that many animals actually know that this collection even exists. Many assume the greatest artifacts have fallen to antiquity, but a special trusted few, know better," said Jeffries, as he turned to Averly, spreading his arms out wide. "And now, my dear, it's your turn." Averly looked at him and blinked twice, unsure of herself. "How do I know which one to pick?" Averly asked the wombat. Jeffries turned back towards the tables, lowering his arms. Just remember that you're looking for something purple. An amethyst or a sapphire will likely do you best, that there are others that will work. Look for something that could travel easily with you and hide if need be, and of course something that you would cherish as though it were part of your body, because it very well becomes a part of you over time, said Jeffries. Averly sucked in her breath, holding it against the falling pit in her stomach. Jewelry of the most ornate designs glimmered before her. Silvers and golds, as well as alloys she couldn't put a name to, danced in the light as she swept the torch out before her. Hundreds of pieces of what could have been hundreds to thousands of hours of work laid out before her. The number of tiny jewels caught the breath in her throat. She stared at them, trying to identify the types of stones she saw. Some were colors she couldn't put a name to. Some seemed to change hue and saturation with a mind of their own as she counted. There were stones held in fittings the size of her index claw. These are beautiful, Averly said, trailing off as she continued to study the work before her. Jeffrey smiled to himself and placed his paws behind his back. You're right, dear. These really are amazing pieces of work. Some of these were made by the four magic users of the highest orders, by crafts animals that rivaled no others in their times. There will be pieces here that will never be found in any other collections on the planet, as far as some that were used by mages so powerful that they had to be locked away for fear of who would use them next. We've been storing these for every great recorded. We've been storing these from every great recorded magical age for the last few centuries, but the Amberstone collection goes back millennia. As far as we know, we're the most complete magical artifact collection in known history. And we've been doing our best to live up to that reputation. Not that many animals actually know that this collection even exists. Many assume the greatest artifacts have fallen to antiquity, but a special trusted few, know better, said Jeffries, as he turned to Averly, spreading his arms out wide. And now, my dear, it's your turn. Averly looked at him and blinked twice, unsure of herself. How do I know which one to pick? Averly asked the wombat. Jeffries turned back towards the tables, lowering his arms. Just remember that you're looking for something purple. An amethyst or a sapphire will likely do you best, that there are others that will work. Look for something that could travel easily with you and hide if need be, and of course something that you would cherish as though it were part of your body, because it very well becomes a part of you over time, said Jeffries. Averly sucked in her breath, holding it against the falling pit in her stomach. Okay, well, I'm taking a break, so I might as well do some ads. This is my first one, so bear with me. So, if you haven't heard about Anchor, it's the easiest way to make a podcast. Let me explain. It's free. There's creation tools that allow you to record and edit your podcast right from your phone or computer. Anchor will distribute your podcast for you, so it can be heard on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and many more. You can make money from your podcast with no minimum listenership. That's pretty cool. It's everything you need to make a podcast in one place. And all you have to do is download the free Anchor app or go to anchor.fm to get started. Please visit anchor.fm/divergentmind to leave a message so that I may get back to you. Thank you. Have a nice day. So Anchor is asking me to ask you to support me financially. I would ask that you go to my Patreon to do that, which is patreon.com/divergentmind. It means you can either become a monthly subscriber at a different tier of $1 to $3 to $5. I'm not looking for a lot. I'm not asking for a lot. I'm not asking for anything. This is going to go to the end of my podcast. I don't like it when podcasts straight up ask you for money when I'm doing okay. Well, I'm not doing okay. I'm surviving now to the point that I can make this. I would love to be able to make improvements to this by, say, getting... So basically, I'm running off an iPad, and I would like to improve it by getting different things that would make it better. Maybe some headphones that monitor output, or a better mic, though the mic I got was from J-Wife, so I might not even use the better mic. You know what I mean? It's all about whatever I need at the time, but really it's just to get healthy again. Because I'm currently over 300 pounds and I don't want to die that young. I would really like to be able to afford some vegetables so I can go back to my vegetarian diet. Because being this big sucks. And I'm happy to sit in a chair all day, but I really got to walk my butt off, literally. So that's what the money would be for. It would be for healthy food because I can't afford it. I can afford ramen and pasta and rice and beans, but I can't live on carbs because that's how you get this big on antipsychotics. Junk food and carbs, which is just cheap and plentiful around me. So I would like to leave my house and just lose some weight. And to do that, I would like to go to the store and buy some vegetables, please. But you don't have to do anything. I'm not asking you to. I'm not begging. I'll figure it out on my own. Much pleasure, Jay. Okay, so I just wanted to let you know that I have a YouTube channel called Taught Myself, and that I've decided to start selling merch already with a phrase that my brother showed me saying, "My disability is invisible," of which I made a hat for myself. So I decided to make hats, shirts, hoodies, for both men and women on spreadshirt.com. All you have to do is search for "My disability is invisible." It's in green, and that's mine. You'll know it's me because when you click the sale icon, the same little Divergent Mind icon comes up. And I hope you'll support me. I make about $5 per shirt or per sale. Everything else goes to Spreadshirt. But that's okay because it's still a better deal than a lot of other places. And I really hope you'll support me. Come check me out on the YouTube. Teach me how to do that properly so I can have a community there too. And I await your response. Have a lovely day. Jay.
Hey people, take a listen to the Divergent Mind podcast. You get both insight into living with a serious mental illness and get to listen to a lovely tale about a journey cute little animals need to take. Don't miss out, and remember, divergent minds don't need to think alike.